ladies and gentlemen, it's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today's guests are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be fully operational again.
And we have our man in Kiev, Ukraine, Ivan Kucherenko. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Still a live man in Kiev despite today's night, because we had a Russian strike again on Kiev, so it was pretty loud night here.
Ivan, do you have a video to show us?
Yeah. Let's start with it.
Let's start with that, and then we'll talk.
Is video not working?
No?
It just abruptly cut off.
Oh, okay. Then sorry, I will launch another one video I just wanted to show today.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with it. It's not about Kiev, but very important.
Eastern Ukraine, in front of a residential building, the top 3 floors of which have been completely destroyed. That's one of the sites that was hit by Russian missiles earlier this week. The death toll at this point is 31 people, but there are still 10 missing people in the building behind me. We're in Ternopil, which is a city that is considered relatively safe. Typically, these strikes have happened on civilian targets in either Kyiv or closer to the front lines. The attack is coming just as news that the U.S. has put forward this new peace plan. 28 points, it would mean huge concessions to Russia, territorial concessions, a small Ukrainian army, and no long-range weapons. The people I've spoken to on the ground here have all seen this peace plan. It's seen as basically a capitulation to Russia, the very country that invaded them. We spent hours with a man whose 86-year-old great-grandmother lived in the building. Her refrigerator is on the 6th floor, and you can actually see how it's crumpled up in the face of the building. In the beginning, he felt some level of hope that she would make it because she is a survivor. She was geared through the German occupation of this country. Now he believes she's dead. The mood is quite somber here. I mean, for obvious reasons. There's just so many people who were killed, but also because the country seems like it's at a bit of a crossroads with the Americans pushing so hard to get a peace plan through, and they're just all feeling very disillusioned.
Well, it hurts so much that there are substantial peace proposals flying back and forth. And some people believe that there is a good chance that it may work out this time. I'm not in that camp, personally.
Neither am I.
Neither you. Well, okay, and yet Russia doesn't show any trace of willingness to be engaged in some kind of a peace process. They are absolutely not. In fact, with each new proposal or changes and so on, here is our answer. Okay, you don't have to guess, we agree or we don't. Here is so many people are killed, so many building destroyers or so on. Did you get? Oh, you didn't get it? Tomorrow, watch out tomorrow. We're going to help you to understand where we are. So, question to you right away. If, as we both believe, maybe Ivan too, that the peace proposal will lead nowhere, then why Ukraine is wasting its enormous human capital? Look at the people involved in this process. It's Zelensky, Yermak, the Podolyak, almost anybody who is right on top of Ukrainian hierarchy. Why are they wasting time and neglect the food?
I've got an answer, Sasha. Actually, that's President Zelensky said in his speech to Ukrainians the day we've received that actually Russian peace proposal, which was transferred via Vitkov
By Google Translate.
directly to President Trump, and I don't know what leverages Russia put for him to pass it further to Ukraine without reading it actually. But as President Zelensky said, we have to carefully review this peace proposal because, according to it, we have only two options: to lose our dignity or to lose our partner. Because if Ukraine rejects that peace proposal offered to Ukraine, not by Russia, no, but by United States, by President Trump, then obviously it will lead to the cut off military supplies to Ukraine, even being paid by NATO countries. It will lead to canceling of share of intelligence data, which is important because the intelligence data, the satellite data which United States provide to Ukraine, actually inform Ukraine about ballistic missile strikes. Ukraine on our own, and even with the European countries, we don't have possibility to and enough satellites to watch the huge territory of Russia in order to understand whether those strategic bombers are flying off to bomb Ukraine, or whether they are bringing their ballistic missile systems to the places where they may strike Ukraine actually. And thanks to that, our air alert system actually works, and Ukrainians have a chance to go to the safe place in order to be alive after that strike. So the instruments which President Trump administrations are using, they are quite unhuman, I say, because what we've seen in media, that President Trump administration blackmails Ukraine to review that peace proposal carefully and to sign it just before the Thanksgiving Day, very quickly, like in less than a week. Otherwise, United States will stop providing Ukraine with the intelligence data and and stop selling weapons for Ukraine via NATO countries. So it's a really bad. I'm not President Trump. I'm not President Zelensky. I'm not Ukrainian official. So I may say what a lot of Ukrainians think actually. And the game which President Trump is playing with his advisors, who wants to do business with Russia actually, they are not interested in punishing the war criminal. They are interested in doing business with Russia and earning a lot of money. And while playing this game, they show that for United States, it's not a point of protecting democracy. It's not a point of punishing war criminals. It's not a point of stopping atrocities. It's like Vice President Vance said, why Ukrainians just not and Russians just not stop killing each other and get business together? Why Americans didn't stop killing after September 11th? Why they didn't stop killing Osama bin Laden and just go and do some business with that Islamic terrorists and maybe some cultural exchange with those Muslim fanatics from Afghanistan? Why they launched that operation, spent a lot of money, lost some American soldiers and some soldiers of United States allies? Why just not United States did some kind of business with them? I don't know what in mind
Go ahead.
those people actually were
John,
there.
just before you'll get your podium in a sec, I just would like to point out that this document, if it's a document, I don't know how to call it, a proposal, whatever it might be, it's very murky how, when, and by whom it was created. I'm not going to dig into all this because I think we know more or less what's going on, and it still keep changing. By the way, yesterday there were some changes. It will be more changes. So I think Trump personally is a little bit away now from this document. I think he completely and delegated it to Rubio, and Rubio more or less in charge of it, although probably Witkov has something to say, maybe some others. Driscoll is active. Now he's meeting Russian delegation here and there. But you know what? It's a lot to do about nothing. I think Russia would not agree even to original 28 points document. It will never agree to the 19-point documents or 95 points document or 2 points document. It will not agree to anything. So West, Ukraine are spending enormous resources, time, attention, and instead of just put an aim of Ukraine winning the war, period. No peace agreement, no nothing, winning the war. And what if that is formulated? Then you start put points. Okay, and what do we need to do to achieve that? Okay, we need much more arms, much more weapons to Ukraine, the best, most superior weapons. We need sanctions of all kind against Russia, against countries which are trading with Russia. And once that is done, then to say, Putin, hey, come here. How many points plan do you want to sign? You tell us. Jonathan, please address that.
Now, a military historian, Victor Davis Hanson, recently stated that he believes that the war is going to come to an end because he believes, one, Ukraine is running out of troops and Russia is running out of money. I would disagree to a certain point. Is that it will come to an end because Russia is not only running out of money, it's also running out of troops, and it's running out of troops faster than Ukraine is running out of troops. And it also, most military analysts have failed to take account of the recent ongoing Ukrainian military actions against the Crimean Peninsula, and that they have been steadily, and it has not stopped. They are steadily reducing and degrading the air defenses and logistical capability, and they've been striking oil refineries within Crimea, and basically just reducing Crimea's capacity to resist a potential Ukrainian counteroffensive. Now, Mr. Hansen, Dr. Hansen, does not believe that such an offensive is possible. I respectfully disagree. And I believe that it is that what we cannot see is just as important, if not more important, than what we can see. What we can see, the cards that can be seen face up, is that Russia is taking much greater losses, suffering much greater damage, and that another military analysis has been impressed by the effectiveness of Ukraine's wall of drones and anti-drone defenses against Russian drones. So there's an unequal technological contest going on here. And so right now, I would agree that what the Trump administration collectively has not quite learned yet is what Winston Churchill said about the Russians. Remember what we talked about? That Churchill said that there's nothing the Russians respect more than strength, and nothing for which they have more contempt than weakness, especially military weakness. So right now, Putin is engaging in a lot of verbal propaganda, trying to assert, he publicly asserts that, he's trying to assert confidence that Russia is going to win the war. That is part of the psychological warfare campaign against the West. He believes that the Western will to sustain the defense of Ukraine is not there. Right now, he is wrong in that the Ukrainian will to continue the fight is just as great as it was back in the 1950s. When the Russians occupied Ukraine and they continued their guerrilla warfare campaign. So right now they greatly underestimate the Ukrainian will to resist. They are continuing to engage in terror attacks, which is essentially what they are, terror attacks against the Ukrainian population, trying to visibly create the illusion of progress, the illusion of a Russian inevitable victory. So this is one of those situations where it is right now a contest of will and a contest of deception. So that is where I see it right now, and I still firmly believe in the distinct possibility of a Ukrainian counteroffensive against Crimea.
Jonathan, speaking very quickly about Dr. Hansen and people who think the same way or almost.
Yeah, they sort of move as a group.
No, yeah, exactly.
They don't. Unlike us, they don't want to be seen as decisively disagreeing or breaking from the pack. That's part of groupthink.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jonathan. And one thing you have to remember: one picture is worth 1,000 words. So when you see the picture of attack on Ternopil, when absolutely helpless people are dying, the buildings are going down, and all that stuff, and you think, oh my God, Russians are so strong. Now they reach Kiev, but now they're going to places like Ternopil, and then they will take Lviv and Odessa, and then will complete the bombardments and so on. But you see, interestingly enough, let's, instead of just looking at the picture and say, oh God, think about something. With all these aerial attacks, the terror attacks, so what you see, okay, so there was a building, or just part of the building was destroyed or severely damaged, right? One instance you see there were 7 people died. Another thing, 1 people died and several injured. In a worst case scenario of all time, I think that what's happened in Ternopil, I believe 35 people died. It's enormous loss. But still, when you think about bombardments of Dresden in Second World War, there were hundreds of thousands were dying. So it's comparable. And even that didn't break Germany. It didn't. Yeah, they suffered, they were dying, but it didn't break Germany. So how you think that 7 people dead, or even 35 in Ternopil, how you think that it will break down the Ukrainian spirit and will to fight? No, it will not. So Russians are taking absolutely impossible situation upon themselves.
Yes, and what is also just as important is that when we are dealing with Western populations and their perceptions, we are dealing with people, especially in America, who are ignorant of history. They do not make a habit of studying history, especially histories of wars. Now, there are pockets. There are a number of military history enthusiasts and those who choose to study it, but that is
like yourself,
I'm an outlier in that regard. So yes, and I very thoroughly look at the lessons of the past, and I subscribe to what the late Chancellor Otto von Bismarck once said. He said that two sayings of his that I like. Number one, he said, there is a providence which looks out for children, drunkards, and the United States of America. And the other one is, he said, fools say they learn from their own experience. I prefer to learn from the experience of others.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ivan, I have one remark for you. You mentioned the speech of Zelensky to the nations, that this is the most important thing now to decide, or so on. I'm totally against this Zelensky's speech for 2 reasons. Number one, it was not timely speech. It was just a publication of that quasi-document or quasi-agreement or really piece of nothing. And he took it so seriously as he wanted to address Ukrainian people. How Ukrainian people, with the lack of knowledge of situation on the front lines, what's really happening? They don't know all that. So how they can make intelligent decision about what is the right thing to do, and how you can impose on your people who elected you to lead them to make some kind of decisions which they're not capable because of the lack of information. And even if they would be capable and willing to do so, what's the mechanism of doing that? What, a referendum or anything like this? How? Zelensky was totally wrong. I'm disgusted at what he did. And look at just a few days later, his speech is really worth of nothing. It was completely idiotic, untimely speech. Ivan, what do you think?
Tell us how you really feel, Sasha. Don't hold back.
I don't agree with you, Sasha, because you are not in Ukraine, not in context of media, because that Ukrainians discovered about that plan not from Zelensky and his speech. Ukrainians discovered about that plan from Western media, actually, which announced it, and Financial Times, I think, or Axios, and it was quite.
The Financial Times second.
Yeah, and Financial Times posted specific points of that plan, and after that, Ukrainian media also reposted them.
Gerashchenko was first.
In Ukrainian, and it was quite a panic in Ukraine, because that peace plan, as we've seen in the video from a New York Times journalist who was in Ukraine, it looked like an act of capitulation for Ukraine, actually, with all those crazy requirements. And Zelensky, as our president, as president of country in war, his task is to keep the level of morale of his nation, of people, in order for them to keep fighting, actually, because if
exercise in a way, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was in a point of keeping the morale and being honest with nation, because that peace agreement, if I'm sure, of course, we don't know all the issues about that peaceful plan, and if it was not passed to in detail to President Zelensky, then probably he didn't make that speech to the nation. If it was just mentioned in media, I think that presidential office received that peaceful plan at the same time, and he was quite serious about that, because denying that peaceful plan would mean that would lead to consequences we've already faced in the beginning of this year, when President Trump just tested the instruments, how he can influence Ukraine and how he can make Ukraine accept the peace deal, because he's not putting his efforts on Russia for Russia to accept this peace deal. He's putting his efforts on Ukraine. Like, okay, let's stop military assistance to Ukraine. Probably we have some shortages of weapons, or we need to review our warehouses, Pentagon warehouses. So we just stop all the weapons to Ukraine, even those who was already in Poland. We've seen that in the beginning of this year, and it was a very difficult period for Ukrainian army, for Ukrainian defense, especially because those shipments are the shipments for Patriot air defense systems. It's just denies Ukraine from protecting our cities, and Russians can attack our cities more successfully. Then was another period of testing, like, okay, let's stop providing Ukraine with intelligence data and see how Ukrainians will react. Okay, it was also a great problem for Ukrainians. Another testing, like, let's shut off Starlink terminals for Ukraine and see how Ukrainian army would be successful without Starlinks.
But
And,
Starlink is supplied by Elon Musk. It's not US government.
yeah, but at that time he was in President Trump's team, and I think if President Trump, even now, if President Trump will issue order to stop providing Ukraine with Starlink, Elon Musk will follow this order, even despite the weapons. Those Starlink access is not given to Ukraine for free. Different countries pay for Starlink, including Poland. So President Trump tried several instruments of influence in Ukraine. Now he understands them pretty well, and both with that peaceful plan in media, which appeared in media also appeared information that if Ukraine will not sign that peace agreement like in a week before the Thanksgiving Day, then the United States will stop providing weapons and stop providing intelligence data to Ukraine. It was not.
This is all information from the last week. Information now changed a lot. There are a lot of senators, a lot of congressmen are against Trump. They are, I think, up to 70% are on Ukrainian side. There are new sanctions that are being, there are new sanctions that are being developed against Russia. What's important here to understand, Ivan, you heard about what's happened last night when Ukraine had bombardments of Tuapse, Novorossiysk, destroyed strategic A-60 bomber. And you see, again, there are no pictures of it. I mean, some pictures, but you cannot clearly see what's happening. It's not like Ternopil. Okay, here is a bombardment, there is a building destroyed, there are people died, or so on. So people in the West, even politicians, they look in the pictures, oh my God, look at what happened. But they don't see what's happened in Tuapse and Novorossiysk. And if Ukraine can multiply that, and they are producing now a lot of their own weapons, they don't need drones from somewhere else. They produce a lot of
That's why a very important point was amongst those 28 points that Ukraine promises not to strike on Moscow and St. Petersburg with our missiles. Let's come back to 2022. Russia launches their so-called special military operation to demilitarize Ukraine.
This time we want you to surrender.
But wait a minute, but there are a lot of Russians who became furious. They're saying, oh, so you protect St. Petersburg and Moscow, but if you live in Voronezh or Tuapse or anywhere else, you just go and kill them all.
That moment from the document actually shows Russian mentality and the mentality of Russian government. They just don't care about what's happening and people in Moscow, they don't care what's happening in any other part in Russia. People in St. Petersburg, they don't care what's happening in Moscow. They're just on their own. And Russian government, for them, it's important Moscow and St. Petersburg to be safe. And they asked President Trump to include that moment and that document in order to Ukraine promises not to. It was a really funny moment.
You know how it is in Russian saying «Друзьям все, врагам закон». Всем остальным закон. So the friends, everything what they want, the all others, the law. by law, we are going to expropriate everything from you and take everything from you, and so on. So if you're not
we have a similar saying: "What's mine is mine, and what's yours is negotiable."
and eventually also mine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation.
It's actually a principle how Russia wants to sign that peace agreement. First of all, they've captured parts of Ukraine, and now they want to train captured parts of Ukraine with the Ukraine in order to get more territories. So what?
Okay. Kherson goes to me. Kharkiv going to you. So we share equally. Okay, this is yours, this is mine. Thank you very much.
International laws? No international laws. We didn't hear about any international
the
laws.
Russians agreements to the Russians, agreements and treaties and contracts. As I've said before, to the Russians, all those things are like eggshells. They are made to be broken. So this is something that the Trump administration is slowly but steadily coming to realize, and a great number of U.S. senators certainly have already recognized this. They are not told what to think by the executive branch. They are free to investigate on their own, and they can rely on their own analysis. We have a great number of military historians and analysts here in the West who are fully aware of the history of this. They may not be as visible, but certainly, the three of us, with our collective knowledge of military history and strategy, we can afford to take a very contrarian viewpoint and point out that in effect the emperor has no clothes. That in this case, that there is an almost absurd misunderstanding of Russian intent. They are going to, and Putin is desperately trying to portray this aura of supreme confidence, this idea that Russian victory is inevitable, in as unjustified as it is objectively or from other points of view. It is nevertheless it is the only real strategy he has left, because if he goes home and they declare, okay, this operation's over, then the Russians will have to deal with the consequences of their losses and their destruction. And they will be confronted with not only a much stronger Ukraine and a recovering Ukraine, but they will also be confronted with a much stronger NATO, something that they did not want to begin with. They are getting the opposite of what they wanted. So that, and right now, as we are going into December, where normally you would not expect a major offensive to be possible, the Russians will continue their missile bombardment or drones or whatever limited attacks they can muster. They will continue to take high losses, continue to be exhausted. But for Ukraine, they hold the real cards right now. They hold the hidden cards, the ability to launch a counteroffensive, which I estimate that just based on the appearances, they are not reducing the air defenses of Crimea and in that area simply for the fun of it, or simply to just be shooting off their weapons. There is a purpose behind it. I would also estimate, even though that I do not have access to classified information, I would estimate that I'm relying on historical analogy. Remember the Germans in World War II on the Western Front, when it looked like there was only one intelligence officer on the Allied side, on the American side, that was seeing the preparation for a German offensive, and that was Patton's intelligence officer, Patton's G2. And he informed Patton of such, and they were prepared to react when the Germans launched their Ardennes counteroffensive in December 1944. So do not underestimate the things that you do not underestimate the potential of the things you cannot see, that our allies or even our enemies keep concealed. So because I believe that, as Churchill said, that in wartime the truth is so precious that it must be protected by a bodyguard of lies. So there is a great deal of discussion going on here.
Something that, of course, in all this track of peace proposals and documents and all this stuff. Of course, Trump is being very influential, one way or another. It doesn't matter whether he composed this document or even read it. It doesn't
No.
matter.
He
But
probably delegated.
he delegated, okay. But what's important to me is one thing. Trump is going in his attitude toward Putin and Russia. He's going against 80 years history after Second World War. He's annoying all Western leaders. He's annoying his own people, including Congress and MAGA and just name it. Okay, Trump could afford to do it at the beginning of his second term, saying that, okay, yeah, it's difficult, it's not easy, but at the end of the day, I will prevail and Russia will become a normal country and I will do a lot of business there with Putin and somebody else, doesn't matter what, so on. Now, almost a year passed by and Trump has to, being practical man, being a businessman, not that all his businesses were successful, but let's call him a businessman. Some you lose some, you win some. Okay, so he's a businessman. So as a businessman, he has to learn sometimes to take your losses. In stock market, in trading, the rule number one, it's preservation of capital. You cannot afford run losses. You have to cut your losses and let your wins run.
Cut your losses and let your profits run.
Yeah.
And in this case, he has to realize that Russia does not really possess the economic resources to be a worthwhile business partner. They simply have expended too much. He's going to realize, if he has not realized it already, he's going to very shortly, especially if oil prices keep coming down.
There is another consideration. It's a time. He is expiring slowly but surely. He has another 3 years left if he will be allowed to end his term. And in 3 years, even if they will sign all agreements in an hour and a half, okay, everything is done, everything's signed, there is no time left for him to do all these grandiose projects in Arctic and with the Russian oil and whatever else he wants to do. He simply runs out of time. So he has to understand that concept as well as all others, cut its losses, put Russia on its knees and ask them to leave Ukrainian territory. Just run and do whatever the hell you want to do. And if you don't do that,
tell him he should be worrying more about China at this point, because China has grievances against Russia in its eastern territories, and also that the Putin is apparently very upset at those new Chinese maps, which show Russian territories belonging to China. So there is that factor, and many people overlook the historical animosity between Russia and China, which even manifested itself quite visibly during the Cold War in 1969, when there were Russian and Chinese forces engaged in military clashes along the Ussuri River. And there was a book published at the time, War Between Russia and China, by Harrison Salisbury, who pointed out that particular book was, and that may have influenced President Nixon's desire and actual action when he went to China in 1970, trying to exploit the growing rift between the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China. So there are all these various factors that need to be taken into account. And right now, there is President Trump can afford to apply pressure against Russia and should enforce it to end the war and send the message to him: you need to worry more about China than you need to worry about Ukraine or NATO, because we are not going to take over your territory. China is.
Yeah, well, listen, probably that's all going to happen. And I think that Trump being well, you want to call him a businessman, that's okay. Being practical man in some ways, he doesn't want to cut his ties with Putin. What he wants to do is an appearance that he says to Putin, Putin, look, I adopted your document as a peace plan. I introduced it to Zelensky. I was saying that, okay, you have to sign it by Thanksgiving. Okay, I talked to, or my people talked to Europeans. It's not my fault. The Europeans, they don't want the peace plan, or they don't want to do, but I want to do that, but there is so much I can do, Vladimir. So you have to understand me. And yeah, I do have my limitations. Indeed, he does. And we'll see how he will play that card skillfully. Which he knows.
I mean, it's a most amazing multi-sided poker game. It's either 4-dimensional, it's either 3-dimensional chess or a multi-sided poker game, and the complex interactions are amazing. And remember when Trump told Zelensky way back in March, it says, "You don't have any cards." And you can bet that Zelensky was thinking at the time when he said that, "Oh, yes, I do."
But if he had cards then, he has even more cards today.
They're much stronger than they were back then.
I think, and the only thing how I explain why Ukraine hasn't started a decisive attack against Crimea is considerations of saving more Ukrainian lives as much as possible. Maybe
offensive action. They would basically have to, you know what, the real prerequisite here, in order for Ukraine to seriously consider an counteroffensive against Crimea, is the main prerequisite, just as the Germans figured that they had to achieve air superiority over England prior to any potential invasion of England. They had to achieve air superiority. What the Ukrainians figure they must do, they must first, they have to do two things. First, finish the degradation of Crimean air defenses. Second, actually three things. Second, they would have to finish destroying the energy infrastructure, the oil facilities within Crimea. And third, and most important, they would have to successfully cut off the Kerch Bridge to prevent it from being able to reinforce, provide supplies and reinforce it. Even though the Russians have decreased it, once they cut it off completely, then Crimea there is isolated. The Russian forces that are occupying it would be very vulnerable to air attack and to any other counteroffensive actions. And then with whatever strategic reserve that the Ukrainian military leadership has earmarked and set aside for an offensive, that is when they would commit it to an offensive supported by Ukrainian drones, Ukrainian air forces, with whatever reserves they have set aside to execute that counteroffensive against Crimea. Once they do that, that will be the decisive moment. And go ahead.
Ivan, I have a question to you about the aviation. I'm aware, and probably you are too, about the new agreement between Ukraine and France, that France is supplying 100 Rafale fighters and a lot of other military techniques and weapons. You're aware of it?
Yeah. And France is a great friend of Ukraine, together with Germany, together with the United States and other countries, and they really want, because they're closer to Russia actually, and they remember history lessons pretty well, and they remember what
they see reminders all over the place.
Yeah, what came after the Munich in 1939. Then they are interested more in Ukraine to keep fight against Russia and to sign a peace agreement only on conditions which will not award the invader, which will not award Russia, but which will punish the invader. But probably at the time is not didn't come yet for Russia to sign the agreement in which they will be punished. As Ukrainian head of intelligence Kirill Budanov said, the moment, the window of opportunity to sign a real peace agreement will be in February. So now it's probably not the best time, because everybody in Ukraine knows what will be next. Ukraine successfully negotiated with the United States about that 28-point plan. Now it shortened. Now it's 90-point plan, and a lot of transformed in it. But Russia will not accept it. Russia already said that this peace agreement is not an option for Russia, that it's not an interest of Russia, and they will continue their so-called special military operations. So at that moment, I always recall a moment from movie on Western Front Without Changes by Eric Maria Remarque on a Netflix, and in the end there is that moment when Germany signed peace agreement with France and Great Britain in train. When they've read that peace agreement, said, oh no, just sign it. You don't have any other options, and they've signed that.
Conditional surrender. That's what it is.
And they've signed that, despite there was no war on German territory.
Right.
There was no bombing of German factories, of German energy infrastructure. They've just let they've captured a lot of territories, but they were not able to continue this war. And I think actually the time for the real peace agreement, which will punish Russia for their invasions, for their atrocities, for everything they've done in Ukraine, it will come a little bit later, and Ukraine just have to keep our fight till that, and to keep our partners with us, like United States, not denying their initiatives.
Interestingly enough, that after Second World War, the peace agreement was signed in the same car, and there was a
Very symbolic.
very symbolic. There was this German general or Admiral Keitel, I forgot who was that, and there was a representative of England, United States, Russia, and France. So he signed against each country, and then when it came for France, he says, "Did we lose to France as well?" And finally he signed it. Yeah, that was a history, and that's how it went. It's very interesting when Putin will sign his complete capitulation. That's what I'd love.
The right things are going right now. It may be his successor that signs it, and whether it's voluntary or involuntary, and this will be it will be a warning. It will not be a permanent peace, but it will be a peace that Ukraine and its European and NATO, European and hopefully American allies will be able to sign and guarantee at least a conditional peace along the lines of between North and South Korea, at least for the next several decades. And we could hope then that would establish the basis for peace and security for the remainder of the 21st century, if it all works out the way it should.
Ivan, you didn't think about the fact that, as you said, Germany signed capitulation without any foreign army on its territory. Okay, do you think that something happened with Russia maybe later on, that they will sign capitulation without any country invading it, simply because we will run out of soldiers, out of finances, out of everything?
Yeah, I think that it will be. There is a possibility that this war could end in this way, when Russia will not have any resources, any money to keep fighting, and either Ukrainian forces will just attack and capture enormous prisoners of war, destroy and capture all what Russia has conquered, and maybe capture historical Ukrainian territories like part of Belgorod region, of Krasnodar region, Bryansk region, all those territories which were originally Ukrainian, and establish a buffer zone there, like Russia. All they will, in order not to achieve such losses, and in order to just to have a possibility for their soldiers to left their weapons and go home by foot, they will sign capitulation. But it will happen only in the moment that if they understand that the consequences of not signing it will be much worse.
Agree. And I wish that Russia will sign its capitulation in Yalta. So it will be, it was Yalta 1945, and it will be Yalta 2026.
You really like to go for that symbolism, don't you?
Yes, I do.
But I would say that, interestingly enough, it's an interesting signal, Ivan, that you mentioned about the head of Ukrainian intelligence saying that it's mentioning February, about that would be possible. That would also be very convenient timing, because if such a thing, if it doesn't occur diplomatically, Ukraine by then most certainly will, at the rate that the degradation of Crimean air defenses and other facilities within Crimea are continuing and will continue over the winter, that by that time, I would predict that Ukraine will be ready, if they don't have any other opportunities to negotiate a peace, that they will have the opportunity then to launch that counteroffensive in February or March and force a peace by achieving that decisive operational victory.
Yeah. Well, listen, I would like to thank you both very much for today's program. I'd like to mention that Ukraine is hanging on. It's not about to capitulate anytime soon. I've looked at a lot of information, what's happening in Pokrovsk, what's happened in many other points. Russians having unsustainable losses. For every one Ukrainian soldier, there are 5 dead Russians. And I don't know for how long Russia can sustain such losses. That's becoming ridiculous. And maybe this is why, even if Putin will not sign this agreement at the end of the day, but even the fact that he initiated that through his envoy Dmitriev, his son-in-law, the process or so on, indicates something. If he would do so well on the front lines, why would he do that? He would never consider any peace agreements, proposals, anything, but he initiated that. And most likely the first draft was produced in Kremlin with this Dmitriev bringing it to Florida and so on and on and on, which you know all the history. Listen, guys, Ukraine is there to stay. Period. And I really believe in Ukrainian ingenuity, in the talent of Ukrainian people, in their bravery, and Ukraine will be victorious. Slava Ukraini.
Both history and the current situation fully support you in that regard. And I would add, in addition to glory to Ukraine, I would also add, God bless America. Because
yes.
both will be required both will be required in order for justice and peace to prevail in the Ukrainian.
Absolutely. And same goes for Canada. Canada is not seeing this the same way as United States. They're much more with Europe. So is Japan and a lot of countries in the world. And hopefully Trump will join that very soon. I really do.
We just engage in quiet diplomatic persuasion, and we also rely on the principle in the United States government of checks and balances. Remember what James Madison said, that ambition must be made to counteract ambition. You are seeing that process. You've been seeing that process at work for throughout all of United States history. That is one of the main principles of how the U.S. government works, that ambition counteracts ambition, and that the outcome of that has to be compromise. And so you see that painful process being worked out in the United States' current efforts in its involvement in the war in Ukraine. So we are going to see this process play itself out, and I believe that it will work itself out favorably for Ukraine, but also for Europe as a whole.
Jonathan, totally agree with you. And again, thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. And let's get together on Friday. And maybe we will have a lot of very interesting news. Thanks a lot.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.